Okay. So what I'm going to do is, from having nothing, I'm going to create a scene from Tomb of Annihilation called Hrakhamar, which is a big underground forge that's been taken over by fire salamanders, or fire newts actually. So I intend to make Tomb of Annihilation maps as I go through them in my campaign. I'm going to be doing this whilst trying to not get spoiled. So I am going to just make a new folder called Tomb of Annihilation for my scenes. I'm going to make Hrakhamar. Where did I put it? Oh, I'm in sounds, that's why. Images, I've made a TOA maps folder, and Hrakhamar is the only thing in there. Now, we'll come back into this in a second, because we're going to want to see how the grid overlays with the map, but do I want it to appear as anything else to my players? On this occasion, well, it's up to you. You change it on the fly. If, like our group, you met the dwarves who lived there before they got kicked out, they'd tell you it was called Hrakhamar. If you didn't meet them, and your players just stumbled on it, you might not want them to find out automatically it's called Hrakhamar. You might want it to be called Fire Newt Forge. So the scene is what it's called on your storage list and in your menus. Navigation name is what appears up here at the top for your players when they're on it. So I'm going to call it Fire Newt Forge. A little trick I like to do is I like to always change the background colour to be black. Because then, if you have a large dungeon and they have Fog of War, which is black, I'm trying to explain what I mean. If you started off in a corner and you can see because of a grey that you know you're in a corner, well, you know what directions to go in. You know probably not to head north because you'd already explored part of that, so there's probably not much in this little space. By making the background colour black, your players have no idea if they've spawned in on the middle of a map. To put it in context for Curse of Strahd players, when you enter Death House, you can see straight away you're down at the bottom left of the map, so you know you can't go south. When you get down to the catacombs in Death House, from the staircase that goes all the way up, you're in almost the middle of the map. If you have the backgrounds on, they realise that. If you have the background being black, they don't know where the map ends and begins. So it's really useful for stopping a bit of meta when it comes to exploring. So I put my backgrounds to black. Keeping it grid size I'll probably change, but we need the map image loaded up to do that. I want this to be a map they need to explore with token vision. It's a sprawling dungeon, so I don't want them to see it all. So I do not want global illumination on, like I have on this map. And I do want fog exploration on. Darkness I will change, but later. I don't want any particular journal notes. I don't want an audio playlist to start because I haven't got one yet, and I don't want weather to start yet. So that's all I'm going to do. Click save. It tells you you're changing the dimensions of the scene, and it warns you if you have objects in there, like walls, it's going to affect them. This is why getting your grid size right is the very first thing you need to do, because otherwise it all gets messed up. If I resized all of this and then moved it or shrunk it, my walls will move with it. So straight away, we can see an issue that a square here on the map should equal 5 feet. However, our foundry squares are much bigger. So if I had it on a medium player, at the moment, they take up a quarter of this room. So now the map's on the screen, we want to rearrange that. And there's a few ways you can do it. Personally, I like clicking the grid rule and messing around on this screen. So here's a good... Now, this is a map where the grid is hard on. That's kind of easier for us because it means all we need to do is shrink the red squares until they overlap perfectly with these squares. So I'll make it 50. 50 looks like a good start. And then I'm just going to click and move. Does this fit in? Nope, needs slightly more. It's a bit of an unusual size grid. It just takes a bit of getting used to sometimes. Now, unusually, I noticed that for different rooms, it isn't syncing up perfectly. If you look at the vertical line, a vertical grid here, even though there is the slightest bit of shift, increases. So I am going to change the background image scale slightly. And this is just a bit of guesswork to get it right. However, I always think this is worth doing first, because everything else that you're going to do is based on this. We're getting there. Now, it looks like we're not going to get this perfect, as this is part of how the map's been designed. It looks like the grid is not perfectly aligned. For example, if I go on, I'm going on this row here. We can see even though there's perfect alignment, it slips. And when we go down, even the vertical isn't on. So it's not ideal. When I get a map that does that to me, I like to just make sure that most of it works, particularly the rooms that are more likely to have combat in. Now, I know that's easier said than done. And sometimes combat ends up happening where you don't expect it to be happening, but we've just got to try and work with it sometimes. I've given it one last go of shifting the size out. So that's a lot better, but you can see even though it's perfect here and there's no lapse, it starts to shift out over at the top. I think this is as good as we're going to get it now without me spending most of my video doing this, but this is the most important part. If I was using this live in a campaign, I would sit here for hours till I'm happy with that. That wouldn't make for a very good stream though. I'm going to click commit, and that's all. Oh, I've been followed. Thank you. Oh. Thank you very much, Malan. Malandello. I appreciate that a lot. So the main things we're going to do here is walling. Now, I see a lot of people complain about walling, but honestly, I love it. I'll normally put, I don't know, Critical Role on or a film that I've seen before and can kind of tune out of a bit, and I'll just go for it. Handy things to know with walling. If you hold down Control, then when you click, it will automatically go on to do another piece of wall, so you can just chain things like that. Very useful for going around corners. I'm going to delete all this, obviously, in a second. If you hold Shift, that overrules any sort of snap tool and gives you really, surgical precision with putting things in. So I like to use that for trickier things, normally where doors and windows are involved. I also like leaving a bit of space here. I don't like it when players' vision ends perfectly on there, because I think quite often it makes it difficult for them to see what's happening and where the room actually ends. It looks really sort of artificial. So I like having it like this, so players can see a bit of wall. However, if I know that there are secret doors on a map, I'm very conscious to reduce that gap a bit so it's thinner, because nothing looks more suspicious than all the walls being quite thick, except for this one wall in this one room looks very skinny. That's the perfect way for your players, whether they realise it or not, to go, I want to look at this. So always keep an eye out for if there are any secret... I don't think there are any secrets in here. As I said, I've only ran this as a player, and I got my DM's permission to do this. Setting you, if I look up this dungeon, because she made a lot of homebrew changes. So if I look this dungeon up, am I going to get spoiled on something huge and enormous I didn't know about? The wall isn't perfectly aligned there. I don't mind that. I know a lot of DMs would look at this and go, oh, he's got wonky walls, but it's been carved out of stone. I don't like it to be totally, totally perfect. So we just go through and set it up like this. One of the things I'm really looking forward to with this, my DM didn't do it here. She was still learning. The ropes were foundry and was pressed for time, but for me, I thought it was a real shame we didn't go with all the lighting effects in here. There's a huge forge with, you know, rivers of molten lava. You've got some fantastic... I really think we're going to get this looking very cool. I'm hoping to get the whole place done tonight. I'm going to try and get this done start to finish in one stream. I will upload it to my YouTube channel as a bit of a foundry demo of a start to finish map being made. And then I think I'm going to make one of those... If you've seen my channel, you'll know for Curse of Strahd, I do like Curse of Strahd showcases. I'll go through and show how I set somewhere up in Foundry. I'll start doing that for Tomb of Annihilation as I go through it. I've also just started as a player in a Rime of the Frost Maiden campaign. If you are familiar, if you watch my campaign, Bartandalis, the Mad Cartographer, is the DM. I'm a player along with Loot Tavern, the guy who makes items as his Patreon. And also, if you really watch my stream a lot, two of my frequent... If you watch it live, not on YouTube, two of my very frequent commenters, Mr. Deck and Sunshine and Daisies, they are the other players. So if we go through anywhere official from Rime, I'll certainly make maps for that as well. Because I'm reaching a point with Curse of Strahd where I'm really looking forward to doing things like my showcases for Amber Temple and Ravenloft, but I don't want to do them till my players have been there, in case one of my players finds my channel and spoils himself. And also, I don't want to do a showcase video on somewhere I haven't run yet, because when I run it, I might find issues, or I might learn something that I'd want to put in a video, and can't, because the video's already done. I don't really like the idea of going back and redoing a video just because there's slightly more knowledge. One of the complaints I've had, a couple of people have commented on my older videos that the quality is very low, because frankly, I was new to streaming, very new to capturing, and didn't realise I had my capture quality set as very low. But the information itself hasn't changed, so I don't feel the need to go back and re-record it all just to say, here you go, you can see the same map of Vallaki, but in HD. And also, I look a lot younger when I'm more blurred on that. Don't want to feel old all the time. So these are storage rooms. One of the things I'll need to check, actually, is I don't think I have the fire newts in this Foundry world. So I might have to just use wolves or something. So I am aware that I'm not doing doors as I go. I think it gets fiddly if you try and do all the doors, all the walls, and I know there's no windows here underground, but all the windows, I like to just go and do one thing at a time. These are obviously much more roughly hewn walls, so I'm not going to be as neat with a wall in there. Just thought of somewhere else I need to do a Foundry showcase for Curse of Strahd. The Underwater Temple, which is homebrew content for Lake Zarovich. That is I ran that with a map I made myself it wasn't Dungeon Draft. Dungeon Draft wasn't out yet. It was like RPG Maker 5, and it was a bloody awful map I made. I found the program quite awkward to use. It was very powerful, but I just wasn't very good at using it yet. So I made this hideous, like too photorealistic map of an underwater temple. So I think I might remake that in Dungeon Draft, or see if someone else has. That's always the dream. And then go and make one for that as well. Foundry is much kinder now of the limit of how many walls you could have. When I first started using it, it's a little bit strict. Not strict, but performance issues were really noticeable. The main map I noticed it on, well, when I say noticed it, it was killing my players, was Argynvostold in Curse of Strahd, because each level of the map is particularly large, but then each corner is basically a round tower. So that means you've got a large map, and at the four corners of every scene, you have loads of tiny little, trying to make a really curved wall was a bit like sort of doing this, but with many, many more. It was more like, yeah, let me get rid of what I'm doing here. Yeah, it was more like doing something along the lines of, but about, over a huge, huge area, and it just resulted in so many extra lines on each and every map. I'm noticing, I think it is a foundry, I think it's a module issue I've got at the moment that affects my ability to click and drag without changing menu to and from. I noticed it a few times in my session this week when I was trying to swap. One of my players constantly summons owls. Can't complain too much, it's part of her class, but she summons 8 owls. And she always has such convoluted instructions for them, which again is fair, but selecting them and going back and forth, Foundry just seems to occasionally go, no, you can't click on this new owl now, unless you toggle out of the actors menu and back into it, which doesn't sound like a big deal. And it shouldn't be, but it somehow ends up being very irritating to do on the fly in the middle of combat, especially when there's 8 of them. So I'd be interested to know, those of you who are watching, how do you feel about sitting and doing this? Do you actually find it therapeutic, or is it the most mind-numbing chore for you to do? Something else I found very useful, which I'm not going to do on this video in case it spoils me, on Tomb of Annihilation, but I did with the larger maps in Foundry, namely Amber Temple and Castle Ravenloft, is I set up the journal entries as well as books to refer to. I didn't have to, but it was fantastic for learning the dungeon. When I started mapping out Amber Temple, I had been hearing about it all game, and I knew that one day in the far future my group would end up there, but I knew nothing about it. I didn't really know what was there, except one particular NPC and a big storyline element of things that are stored or imprisoned there. But that was it. No idea about encounters, no idea what was in each room. And going through and setting those journal entries up, so good. I didn't copy and paste them, I make a point of typing them out. If I'm sat there watching something or listening to a podcast, it makes it much easier. And that was the best way to learn it. I now know everything that's there. I'm making a point of walling off around spoilers like this, so that my players can't accidentally see it and go, oh, well, we know there's somewhere called Wormheart Mine in the campaign now, and we know it's this way. Okay, Nikki, enjoy your tea. I'm going to do the same thing with to surface down here, because you don't want your players to see that. What if your players were attacked and captured by fire newts out when they were just adventuring? What if your party was all reduced to 0, but you as a DM decided not to TPK them, but instead to fail forward and have them wake up here imprisoned? You don't want them to get to these stairs and see, oh, to the surface. Okay, cool. Well, we had some places left to explore, but we know this is the surface, so we're going to kind of just head out. They can't avoid doing that sort of meta sometimes. With this now, they don't know what's upstairs. It could be an upper level of the dungeon. It could just be a storeroom or the boss's chambers. It just increases that immersion by not giving them information that they probably shouldn't have had. So I always try to box that sort of stuff off. My DM was telling me that this place in the book has some crazy encounters in terms of the number of enemies in small places. If you've ever watched one of my videos, or one of my specific videos about the Curse of Strahd Foundry showcases, the video of me doing the old bone grinder is basically just a 6-minute video of me bitching about it. It is a tiny windmill. It's 4 floors, but each of the floors is like less than 20 square foot. And there's a giant millstone in the middle. And you can't, it's about to be Curse of Strahd spoilers coming up for about 30 seconds now, so cover your ears, or if you're on my YouTube video, jump ahead about 30 seconds starting now. But you fight, what? You fight 3 hags, one of which can summon swarms of wasps. There's a barrel in the roof that can summon 7 dretches. There's, what, 2 kids locked up in the ceiling. Let's say you're a party of 3, and you've got your destined ally with you. 4 people. My God, that's like, what, 13, 14? No, it's more. It's like 14, 15. I've even lost count. Actors all in this building. It's insane. There's just not room for it to happen. They're probably going to unmute me in a minute if they jumped ahead. So that's how I got a life ban from McDonald's, is what I was saying. You're going to see a few things in a minute that I like to do when it comes to ledges and drops. One of my players really doesn't like this, what I'm about to do, but I like it because people have problem players sometimes, or over-excited players who love to jump ahead and do things. I'm going to... Well, first of all, let's have a look. No, I'm not going to do it yet because I've missed some parts down here. This is the only problem with very natural, broken up caverns like this. It's very easy to miss bits. This is also another reason why whenever I do a map, before I go live with it, I always take a character on a little tour through it. I click on a character, I see it with their vision. If it's an important one, I might even log into Foundry as a player, just so I don't have that GM fog of war overview. And I'll just walk through and make sure there's no problems, particularly with doors. You've probably seen on some other videos I've pointed out on some Curse of Strahd highlights. The Church of St. Andrew, the church in the village of Barovia was a good example of that video. I remember how you look at it, and the slightest mismatch between a wall and a door in Foundry just gives you this huge line of sight behind it, which if you then saw Strahd or a Tarask token, just part of it on the other side, again, that's a moment that's ruined for your players and for your party. So it's always worth you taking an extra 10 minutes to click through to make sure that what you've made is going to be worthwhile. Well, isn't going to be a waste of your time. There he goes again, says Mr. Deck. What's he grumbling about now? Oh, but what, me complaining about the bone grinder? It's terrible. Oh, right. Let's have a look. How's Warland going? We're actually done much more than I thought we had. We're very nearly finished. In terms of walls. Oh, that's a bit too wonky, that one. Let me just do that. I don't like that one either. That's a bit too wonky as well for me. There. I'm also going to go give the hags plant growth and take the fight to their oversized garden to battle between each other. That's cool. I toyed with the in mine, Morgantha was much more powerful. And I put some layer actions in, so like each floor of the windmill rotated, almost like Fairgrounds of Horror Ride, just to separate the groups and keep them all sort of trapped on different floors as she etherealed through and sort of singled people out. A bit more mist here. I was toying with the idea of, I couldn't really think of a good way to get it to work. Very Stranger Things upside down, is in her dropping a dimension on them where everything's just black. Very like Four Kings from Dark Souls as well. And just basically dropping them onto a huge black void of a map. Couldn't get it looking good in Fantasy Grounds. I could do it now in Foundry, I think, using negative light effects to make a cool, smoky void that we're all in. But yeah, in Fantasy Grounds, it didn't work. I'm going to do one last pass. We're going to find wall problems as we go, anyway. I'm going to do doors now. I don't like to swap to doors. It sounds daft. I like to do my doors as a bit of wall, double click, and just pick door. And then I like to use shift to overlap the nodes perfectly over the wall. You might not like doing it that way. I just feel like, for me, that is the method that I seem to get the fewest mistakes with. And so that's how I do it. Now, I don't have any door noises set to this place, but if I remember rightly, all the doors here are sliding stone doors. So if you had the ambient doors module, then you could go in, double click on these and change their default sounds if you have access or have downloaded or have bought any sort of like stone door sounds. Go through, point them to this. You can set them for that, and then going around this place, as you're describing these big heavy stone doors, you then don't get you can get proper sound effects for it. I believe the only door that's locked here is the big treasury door vault. We can change that if we wanted to, obviously. you might be playing and think, well, actually, the bottom right storeroom, the fire newts have put a hostage in. So I am going to do something a bit more with that one. So I can say make it a door, update, door state is locked. And then we have a locked door. The vault door here, I'm going to do is being locked as well. Is door, yes. Door state is locked. Okay. Do we have any other doors? None that I can see. So, what are we going to start to do now? We have a drop down here. Now, the map has only done a good job of shading there. You may decide that you want your players to have to make a climbing check to get out of that. One thing I like to do for walls like that, this is the thing one of my players hates, but I like it, is invisible walls. So for barriers that you don't want players just to be able to run up without any sort of check, I put invisible walls down just so they go, oh, I can't move up here, and you can say, ah, right, well, that's because you've got to climb up and make me so-and-so check. I'd rather have a situation where a player who has a very high jump height, for example, goes, oh, I can't get up here, and I can go, oh, 1 second, and drag them over and say, yeah, you can do it as part of your movement with how agile you are. I'd rather do that than have the player who's a 90-year-old woman with a -5 to athletics and acrobatics checks who can't do it, walk over, and then me have to go, oh, actually, sorry, no, you didn't do that thing you just said. Let me drag you back, and now I'm going to explain why you can't do that. It's just easy to go, that's fine, I'll move you, than it is to have to undo something. So for situations like here, where we have all these, when I came here in my campaign, I'm a monk with a quite high strength, quite high athletics, quite high acrobatics, so I was able to clear these 10-foot jumps, no issue, as part of my movement. If you have a group that you don't want to be able to run ahead and mess around, I mean, there's all sorts of DMs. You might be playing online with random people who are quite annoying. You might have hyperactive players who treat it like a video game and go running off ahead. A lot of people play with strangers through sites like, well, not Roll20 if you're watching a Foundry video, but you might be playing with a random group. They might not have that respect for you and that time you've put in creating this, but your friends would, and one of them might run off down and go, ha, I'm running down here and looting my treasure. Well, you might not want them to get spoiled on what's down there. You might want those sort of pauses. So I use invisible walls liberally for things like that when it lets me. Why can't I draw? It's doing it again. Got to click to that tab and back. No idea why. So I always feel you can be a bit more imprecise with invisible walls because they're not going to change what your map looks like. They're not going to cut any vision off. My player isn't going to be stood on the very edge of here unless they're planning to do something anyway. Now players can still see around, they just can't move over without you saying, okay, make that check. You can drag them across this. Absolutely fine. Change their spell list quite a lot. Oh, cool. Yeah. So I'm not going to go and do this for the entire map because I feel like it's not going to change the experience of when we look around it as the character. It's more just to highlight to you how easily done it is. So I could go through and add that around all the bridges and everything like that if I wanted to. What else do we want? I'm going to do lighting last because lighting's the big thing. A module I started using recently was Hey Wait, because that pauses the game, zooms in, and and pauses the game and focuses in on one player. Handy for you for something you want to say in terms of narrative, but you don't want your players to jump in to react in it. Like walking around a corner and seeing Strahd there. A player might go, whoa, nope, not going that way. No, I'm going to go that way, I'm going to go that way. If they step on there and the game pauses and it zooms in, tough. They're in that situation now. So as an example, I don't have Tomb of Annihilation. I thought I did for some reason. No, we don't. So I am going to go with... what is not a great big, huge monster? Oh, I do have fire. I have Griffin Volos. Fire Newt Warlocks. I'm just going to add in a load of these to my dungeon. So as my players enter this room, I might want them to not be able to immediately react. A problem with this as well, you can see when I click on one of these tokens, my vision for some of them disappears. That is because it looks like the Fire Newt Warlocks are not set to have vision, but the standard Fire Newts are. And what that means is they are set to have 0 vision, so they're effectively blind. If I untick that, it will fix their vision. And now, because I fixed it on a token on the map, not in the compendium or in the library, it doesn't affect all of them. So if I were to drag another Fire Newt Warrior on, he'd be blind as well. If I want to fix that forever, I need to fix it in the library. So I've got my monsters in here. I want it so that if my players walk around the corner, let's say there's an ambush. They know they're being invaded. So they are all hiding and waiting to ambush. Just move them around to reflect that. So what I might do is get my player and I might look at what does his vision look like? At what point can they see? Oh, right, that's where they can see enemies. So I'm going to go and get my Hay Wait. Oh no, do I not have Hay Wait enabled on this world? Well, that's easily fixed. You can see me enable a module. Manage modules. Hay Wait. Code Mirror needs enabling. Sure. It's just one time I've broken it now. I was thinking it had happened then. I was thinking I'd broken it. Is the module that shows you a drag... Is it a module that shows you a drag... Yes, it is. There's a module called Show Drag Distance. What I like about it is it shows you... you can set it to start to change colour if you go beyond how far they're meant to be able to move. I think this character, I've forgotten to set the vision on, the movement on, that's why it happens. So I can see here is where I want it to go. Actually, hold on, you're in trouble. So now that I've enabled it, you'll see I've got the Hay Wait tile. So I can just go and drag here and say the trigger type is exclamation. There we go. Now, if the player goes into it, oh, it's the DM is set to not trigger it automatically for situations like this. I'd have to log in as a player to do that, I think. Or Yeah, restrict GM from triggering tiles. I'm going to undo that so you can see it. And then as this player moves up, you might have seen in the options as well, you can remove the sound effect, but I do quite like them. And you can also get rid of... we don't have to pick a particular type, like exclamation or question mark or info. You can just have it pause and move in. But I like it. So I've tested that now to make sure it works, but I want it to still be there for my players. So I can go in and I think it's double right click. Oh, remind me how to change it back. I knew there was a way to change it back, but I can't remember what it is now. Oh yeah, just click the state again to change it over. Silly me. So I could put that here, and then I might want exactly the same thing in this doorway. Now the downside there is, it might, if they came in this door, and they fought them all, and then went this way, it would pause again. But you can always hit space and just say, oh, it was for that. I think sometimes people's quest to set everything up a bit too perfectly is overcomplicated. You can't just go, oh, it's easy just to hit space and say, yeah, never mind that. So, the next thing I want to do is look at the lighting. Now, the lava is going to complicate things with this, because I believe it's something like 30 foot down to the lava. So although this lava is going to glow, do we think the light from that lava would be reaching here, for example, when it's having to go up 30 foot and look around this wall? So we're going to have a think about that as we go. First thing I'm going to do is crank our map down to nighttime. If you are underground, then you can't see anything, can you? The default is no light. So we are starting from the point of pitch black. If our players have torches, those light effects will move the players. So we obviously need a huge amount of light around this river. We'll come back to that in a bit. I'm going to start with the lava in here. So how much... This is a busy forge. How much do we think the glow is going to come from this? I think we'd be keeping that bright light about right. I think we'll be reducing the dim light. And again, a lot of this is just tweaking and playing with it and seeing what you think. The light is obviously going to be a much darker sort of orange. Maybe that seems like a decent colour to me. But we don't just want a static light, do we? We want it to be animated. And we can change all of these. Now I think in here it's going to be a bit different to everywhere else. I imagine all the big lava river being quite slow moving and churning. This, we can see that it's pouring. One thing I'm not going to cover on today's video is like sound effects. But we could obviously have all that forge sound ambience in here as well. Always just worth going through, seeing what you've got. Some things are just not going to be relevant whatsoever. Some things will be. Okay, I think we should start off looking at blurred torch, but slowed and intensified. So if I increase the colour intensity, blurred torch pulls through a secondary colour, which for some reason had gone to green. So I wouldn't normally do that. So I'm going to go for a slightly stronger orange as my secondary colour. I'm just going to update it so we get rid of that. Now I want the animation speed to be very slow. Slower still. And I want the animation intensity to perhaps be a bit less. But I want the colour to be very strong. This is lava, after all. No, I like that. I think that, without the sound of smooth jazz, with heavy foundry sounds playing over it, I think I've actually got... This might not work. I've not tested this beforehand, so apologies if this ends up being rubbish or not working. But I'm fairly certain that I have got... Yeah. Now, this isn't where I'd normally do this. I'd normally set this up as an ambient sound. If it works, I will. But I like that. It's much more ambient, in my opinion. However, I wouldn't normally do that as a sound. I'd have ambient sort of exploration music and combat music queued up for this place. But in here, if I knew the forge was hard at work, how far away do I want the forge to be heard? Do I want them to only hear it when we're in the room next to it? Do I want the sound to go for a while so they can hear it around a corner and they follow the sound until they start to notice the ambient light from the lava and they follow it in and they start the encounter? So I'm going to have the sound extend a little ways. Yeah, it was a very quiet sound effect, and I don't want to crank the playlist input too much. I'll play it again for you, because as you're about to see, it's going to get very loud. So I've put it in as a local sound with volume easing, and I'm going to keep the volume around there. Now, if I were to go back to Sogris and increase my ambient volume, this might be too loud, so I won't play it for long. With volume easing, as we're exploring, we start to hear the sound, and as we get close to the source of it, that should be getting louder and louder for you now as I approach with volume easing. And the sound itself isn't a particularly loud one. I used it as a background foundry noise for about 20 seconds in a video I did once. I did a foundry demo for Twice Bitten, and I said I was going to be talking a bit about foundry. And I started with, foundry is described as a place where metals can be broken down into ores, and it was a terrible joke, but I used like a foundry background scene for it. Terrible sense of humour. But I like that in terms of light. Now, I know some people often do fire newts as giving off a small like dim light themselves. So you might set ambient light effects to your individual fire newts as they move around. I was not, I didn't do that in mine. So let's look at this light now. You may want to have invisible walls again here that block light coming through. Because you might want to have, in fact, something else I'm now realizing. In here, the lava is very close to them. In here, it's a lot lower. So I think perhaps we need the colours to be darker, just to highlight that it's that much further down. So I'm going to make the secondary colour quite a lot darker. Not that dark, maybe. Yeah, that seems okay. And I'm going to increase the blur strength on it. Now for me, that looks great. We don't really want any darker spots. So I'm going to be very careful on where I place these, not to have them overlap too much. I don't want any particularly bright spots that make players go, hold on. That error, by the way, is because I keep accidentally slightly double clicking and it thinks I'm trying to make a light effect that has zero sound, zero value. See, now an issue here, which we're going to try and find a way around. I don't know a perfect way to do this, what we're about to encounter, but I notice where bridges extend over, it now looks like we have really bright bridges on the top, when in fact there is just lava coming from underneath. So we'll address that in a moment. Something else I would like to try and do is make this lava look like it's moving a bit more. I've never tried doing what I'm about to do, so we'll see how this works. I want to try making another light effect that has a very faint, I think, ghostly light effect. Ghostly light just adds a shifting pattern. I want to add a very faint orange that move, in fact darker than that, I think. A very faint orange that moves very slowly. Maybe a bit more red than that, looking at what it's coming up like. Maybe a bit more intense colour. No, I need a bit more than that. More intense. What I'm aiming for here, to restart that jazz when I get out of this menu, it suddenly feels so quiet. That should do it, I think. Where's that jazz? Get back. No, I think that's too fast for my liking still, that animation speed. What I'm aiming for with this is the sense that there is ripples or just some sort of movement in the lava. Let me see what this looks like. I like that. Obviously, with this sort of effect, you need to make sure that it isn't in a position where it spills over onto the brickwork, because it makes no sense to have a pale ripple and glow on your brickwork. And you might even choose to go through in your own campaign or in your own situation like this and use some different colours and layer a bit more variation. One of the videos I put today on the Cursor Strahd Discord was about an aurora effect. I've put on a couple of maps on my Selenka Pass, and that took some fiddling with, but was very, very cool when it was finished. Now, what can we do? And even looking at the light here as well, you can see where, have I perhaps been a bit too rough with my walls? Like, could I have put more blur effect on these? So what I would like to do, and I think I have got, this might not be perfect. We might hear flies buzzing with this. You'll see what I mean. I might just put here. I've got ambient. I've got it somewhere. Berez. I've got sounds I set for Berez, like the bubbling of a swamp. That might be it. Let's see. Where's that character gone? There you are. Get down here. Turn off that. Just delete that Foundry sound. I'm gonna delete it altogether. Actually, let me stop my jazz again. Where's that sound effect set to? Over there. Okay. Yeah, there are flies, unfortunately. If I had a version of this that didn't have the flies on and had like the roar of fire as well, as they're stood here with the sound of that Foundry in the distance, fighting fire newts, and you can hear the bubbling and of lava and like the roar of fire, and you've got this lighting. Crazy atmospheric, I think. It's really, really cool. I get such big like Iron Forge from World of Warcraft or Moria, like Bridge of Khazad-dûm sort of vibes from it. It's great. So, what else do I want to do? Now, I know that these tracks lead to Wormheart Mine. I have no idea what is in Wormheart Mine. I suspect there could be a dragon based on what's happened in my campaign. I know there's probably kobolds and cultists. I don't really know the logistics behind dwarves living here. Having a train track that sounds like it very quickly takes you into a place of things that want to kill them and it not being barricaded off, that's not for me to understand. I'm sure it will come up in the campaign as we progress. But what I do know is it's a bit boring to just have a wall end with a dead end if it apparently leads off to another dungeon. So what I would like to do is put something here. Put a Balrog on the track. Yeah, jeez, yeah. Balrog on the tracks would be something. So I'm going to put a light effect here. Now, what I'm going to do... In fact, I'm going to crank the light up on the map while I'm showing you this, just so I'm not having to click onto the character again and again. So I've brought all the lighting back up. If you're playing this properly with Foundry, it should never be this light in here because we're underground going through tunnels. What's the point in having this program that gives you all these visual immersion tools and you paying, what, £40 for it? Or $60? And then just not use the features? That really confuses me. How you might just walk around with this sort of level of illumination. I want to put an effect on here that just makes it a bit spooky. Remember, players won't be able to see Wormheart Mine the way we've walled it off. I want to add on, we've got a couple in here, Roiling Mass and Black Hole. Now, Roiling Mass and Black Hole, already set to black, good. Both have effects that if I intensify the effect, don't think I need to do the speed and the colour. If I update that, oh, nothing has happened. Where is the light radius? So the dim light, I want to be -10. There we go. And the bright one, -5. I don't want the intensity to be so great. Don't think the speed matters with this one. And I'm just going to fiddle with those a bit more. If I change it to -5 and -5. Okay, -5 and maybe 0. How about if that's -5 and that one's 0? How does that look? Oh, it's undone it. -10, -5. Update. So you can have a light effect, which is basically just a dark and shadowy void. So you could use things like spell effects for fog or shadows in there. But now, as we're playing, if my player comes down here, I don't think I have torch effects set up on this this guy yet. But as they approach, even if they were holding torches, the torches will not burn away this light. Or you could put assets in here to cover the track with cobwebs. You could put drag assets in to put down a barricade, blocking it all off. It's entirely up to you. I could go into my asset menu and go, right, okay, I want, where are we? I'm in sound still. I want to go images. I want to go tokens. I want to go items and assets. What sort of asset do I want to put in here? Have I got webs? Yeah, I've got webs. Not every token is going to be appropriate for every map, either in its artistic style or something like that. You might have, I've got assets that look great on one map, but I'd never dream of using them on another because they just don't look right. But I could layer a load of different webs and set all that up so my players can't progress that way. Or it's made clear that, hey, it would not be the best idea to progress this way. So, I could do the same for here. Now, I don't know if the book specifies just how far it is to the surface from here. It could be not far at all. You could be able to see the surface from here, in which case I'd put a bit of a light effect coming down the stairs so they see a bit of daylight. Now, how you want to go ahead and do that is up to you. You might just want to have maybe light like this. You might want to be very dramatic and have it like that, maybe going a bit slower. We are in the jungle after all. It is very bright. You might want to say, well, look, as you approach, you see slowly, sunlight, glorious sunlight drifting down the stairs, and you might want to put a sound. You might even put I've not got this, but you might put an ambient sound effect here of like bird cries coming from outside. And as we get close, we start to hear the sounds of a jungle. I like to use those volume, ease, and effects in Foundry. And with, how do I lay a web? Got time. With the sound easing, it is always better for you to have a larger area. Let me show you what I mean. It is always better for you to have a much larger area of sound with a lower maximum volume with volume easing than it is to have a smaller one with volume easing. Because the best example I've seen is, when I say I've seen, it's something I ruined myself, I messed up, was a waterfall. This waterfall, you could not hear it at all from 30 feet away. You stepped forward 5 feet and it sounded like your head was underneath it. And it was just stupid in the map. Players were jumping back and forth like, I can hear nothing. Nothing. So, in hindsight, I made that much, much bigger, the sound radius, made the maximum volume much lower. It still gets louder the closer they get to the source, and it became much more natural. I did the same on my Death House Foundry Showcase map, where I showed you how I had the sound of the dinner party happening in the Durst's dining hall. What I didn't like was you open the door into the dining hall, you can't hear anything. You take one step forward into the hall and it sounds like you're at the dinner table laughing. I put a larger radius in, and remember, with your sounds, you can choose if they are local or if they're global. Local means walls and doors stop them. Global just plays everywhere. So I had it as a local sound. So what it meant is when they were stood in the hallway or the foyer, they couldn't hear anything. As they opened the door, that sound could travel further and the sound of the dinner party hit them. Just little things that I think can make a huge effect to the immersion. I don't really know what else we need to change here or to add in. Everything else, I mean, again, if I was doing this for my campaign, I would be going into the journal menu. I would be going in and creating a category for Hrakhamar. I personally would be referring to the book and going, right, what's in this room? Okay, this is the treasury. It contains blah, 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 blah. Because it's a great way for me to learn it so that as we're playing it, they don't step into a room and I'm going, oh, God, right, okay, what was in here? What was in here? You learn it by mapping it. And it's a good chance for you to go, oh, hold on. There's a luck blade in here. I don't think I've got a luck blade item. Right, I can go and make the luck blade item now. There's nothing I hate doing more as a DM, because I always forget to do it, than being put into a situation where I tell a player, oh, just type it out in your bag and I'll add the item in later, because you never remember. You've got enough stuff to do prepping the next one. If I really wanted to go all in here, I suppose things that I would do are... You might want to call the cranes terrain items. They're large cranes on the floor. I wouldn't, but you might want to say that players can't see through these cranes. So I'd map it out with terrain walls. I wouldn't do this in mine. I'm just putting it in to show you. Where's my character gone? He's over near mine, isn't he? So with a terrain wall, you can only see through one. So here, if he approached from this way, he couldn't see if a fire newt was crouched there waiting to ambush him, because he can't see through the crane. Now, if you were to step down here, he might then go, oh, in fact, let me pull one of the fire newts in as an example. Get here, fire newt. You're hid there. You're hidden there now. So as he's coming up here, he might go, yeah, I'll check this way. He can't see that fire newt at the moment. Now, I know we have a bit extra vision as a DM, so we can kind of see it. But he might say, yeah, I've looked around. I don't see anyone. I'm going to take a short rest. And as soon as he starts resting, yeet, gets pushed off the edge. Or something like that. Or as he continues exploring and he steps up, he suddenly at this point goes, oh, and straight into combat. Maybe he's been victim of a surprise round. So we can take our character on a little tour through here with our smooth jazz. So again, we don't have the sound effects set up. And in fact, one thing I have noticed is that he is giving off... Oh, what's happened to my... I have locked up. I don't know what is happening here. My foundry is going insane. Just what I wanted to happen on a stream. That was very odd. That seemed to be lagging then, if anything. Never had that before. So I am going into his vision. Now, a moment. Obviously, your character has vision. Now, this might just be because of how my campaign is at the moment, but if my players are somewhere that is in the dark, I don't like the default 30-foot vision. For me, if a map is daytime, then I will put global vision on the map. Global vision doesn't mean they can see everything, by the way. Walls will still interrupt their vision. So if I just have like an outdoor map, I'll have global vision because I'll think, well, if there's anything they're not meant to be able to see, it's going to be because something's blocking it, and I'll have walls there to reflect that. There's nothing more silly for me than having an open field of a map and your player only being able to see 30 foot. Like the room I'm in is like 22 foot. The idea of being able to only see 8 foot further than that on a sunny day is absurd. So when vision matters, so vision should only matter when it's dark. So what I like to do is have dim vision 5. Because to me, if they're underground, really, you could go with 0. Dim vision 0, because they cannot see anything. They are in the pitch black. If you want them to be seeing something, they need to be using a torch. Now or a light spell. Now I've not got this world set up with the torch module because I never play in it. I just use it to make and test things and to film my videos. So I don't have the torch module. Normally, I could just right click and press torch. Oh, okay, there is one in here. It just isn't set up properly. If I go back into his vision tab, I would have the torch set up on my live characters. to be a blurred torch with a quite low red light when I do it. I like sort of red torch light. I'd have it quite blurred. Why hasn't that done that how I expected? Alternate torch, and then to go back to blurred torch. There we go. Oh, because that one's still red. Silly me, got it the wrong way around. Let me just mute. The one time I forget to mute my Discord, sorry, the messages will start coming through. So that's obviously far too bright. And again, you wouldn't have to set this every time in a campaign. You would just set it once at the start, and that would be that. But I think it's worth taking a moment to do this to show you how it can look when you play. Is it set to 20 and 40? Yeah, it is. That's correct for a torch. I want it to be a little bit more intense, maybe going a bit slower. That'll do. So when I light my torch, here's what I see. As we're going through these tunnels, and then you reach a point where you're like, oh gosh, right, okay. I no longer need that torch because here's a load of lava. But hold on, I can see some light over there. What is it? Oh look, it's that beautiful daylight coming down from the jungle, and we'd have the bird sounds on. But yeah, stepping out, we'd have a roar of that fire. That shift and lava effect that we put down below. I know we couldn't really jump over here, that checks. Again, now he's leaving that light. He's heading into darkness again now. So he either fumbles ahead in the darkness. Maybe he's got dark vision. There are macros you can set up. I like dark vision to be reflected in just dim. I don't like it to be bright. Just dim vision, because it's only shades of grey, isn't it, that we can see him with it. So he can sneak ahead. You start to see a bit of light in the distance. Well, he's got the jump on him. You can go and attack him. He sees the light of the forge. The module didn't stop us because we hadn't triggered it back to setting it off again. And yeah, I'm not going to click around the entire map, but that has been a start to finish mapping and setup of Hrakhamar from Tomb of Annihilation. What do we think? I mean, that's taken me just over an hour. And some things I did quicker than if I was doing it for my own world. Some things took longer because I did them slower and talked about them to you. I think an hour per scene for a map this size. This scene took longer because a lot of the walls are very fiddly. Natural cave walls are quite frankly a pain in the arse. I think it took me longer to map out the werewolf den from Curse of Strahd than it took me to map out like all 3 floors of the Burgomaster's mansion. Because you've got all this sort of fiddly stuff where a house is always squares, isn't it? Or it's always variations of squares and rectangles, except maybe the occasional coved wall. So yeah, please. I know I'm on Twitch now, but I'll be uploading this on YouTube as well. So please talk in the chat now if you've got any questions or anything else you want to see, and I might be able to do it now. If you're seeing this on YouTube, then leave a comment if there's anything on the map building side of things that you don't want to see. Please do try and keep it Tomb of Annihilation spoiler free for me. I know a little bit about the module from past DM stuff, but I would like to remain as unspoiled as possible for my ongoing campaign. But otherwise, yeah, thank you very much. I see there are no questions. So I'm going to end the stream, and I'm probably going to go stream something else. So yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.